Examples of that love. We ask, dear God, your blessing upon those who are not able to be here. Pray for those who are sick and those who are watching out for them. Pray for those who might be traveling. We pray for safe journeys in their regard. Help us, dear God, to be strengthened as we examine your word this morning. Help us to find out what we need to be doing and then apply it to our lives. Forgive us where we go wrong and help us always. In the name of your Son, we do pray. Amen. Luke chapter 12. Again, we've been looking at trying to put the New Testament, the Gospels, into a chronological order, put them into a, what came first, what came second. Again, as sometimes we read passages of Scripture and they're not in sync as far as chronology is concerned. And therefore, we have to, sort of look at them and see if we can find something that will put them together. Again, we pointed out some of the gospel accounts refer to stories or events in the life of Jesus that all of them deal with. Sometimes only one of the gospel writers talks about an event or story in the life of Jesus. So putting them together sometimes is a challenge, but sometimes it's beneficial because if we know what comes before other events, then it maybe helps us to understand the passage a little bit more. We got to a parable that Jesus was going to talk about in Luke chapter 12, and we are going to start with verse 16. It is the parable of the rich young man or rich young ruler, as some passages talk about. So let's pick up with verse 16. And he told them a parable saying, the land of a certain rich man was very productive. He began reasoning to himself, saying, what shall I do, since I have no place to store my crops? And he said, this is what I will do. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have many goods laid up for many years to come. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your soul is required of you, and now who will own what you have prepared? So is the man who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. Now, let's break this parable down a little bit because, first of all, I believe a lot of people misunderstand what is being said here. First of all, is the parable in any way showing that God does not want us to become rich? No, it doesn't teach that. Does it show in any way the fact that we should not plan for a retirement? No, that doesn't make sense either, does it? What we are looking at here is, again, where we place the value. What is the value in the story that we are looking at? The value, as Jesus has pointed out in fact, even later on here, that the value lies within us. Now, that does not mean that we are to ignore value, a material value of things that are around about us. Jesus knew rich people. He talked with rich people. He did not condemn rich people. But those who put their riches before God is the story that we are dealing with in this context. What do we place first in our lives? what would you say that you do not want to give up in your life? There is the key to understanding this passage. You say, well, I don't want to give up my automobile. I don't want to give up my house. I don't want to give up my bank account. Well, those are all physical things. They could be replaced over time if necessary. But what is the most valuable thing? And then we don't usually think about that. Sadly, the only time that we think about the most valuable thing in our lives is whenever we realize we spent all our lives on other stuff and have not put any time and placing value in that which is more important. Where are you placing future valuables? You might have a safe in your house. You might have a safe deposit box. Maybe a special banking account. You say, well, that's where I'm putting my savings. It's where I'm putting that which I value the most. I'm putting it in my safe or a safe deposit box of some type. Jesus is saying here, there is a place to put your treasures. And if you don't think about the treasure first, but the benefit of the treasure later on. You see, it's ironic, but we strive a lot to gain something, and then whenever we get it, it almost immediately loses value. Do you ever notice that? It seems like it's the value is in the chasing of that which we get. But once we catch it, we say, was it really worth all the effort I put into it? Right? That's what we're looking at here. What do we place value upon? What are we willing to exchange that value for? See, there are different parables that Jesus gives. Remember the parable of a person who deals in pearls. He buys and sells pearls all the time. Now, you ask me, and I look at two pieces of round objects, and I don't really care if they're plastic or if they're artificial or if they're real. But a person who deals in pearls would realize that there is a value placed in certain pearls above others. In the one parable, Jesus talks about finding the pearl of great price. Maybe nobody else recognizes the value of that pearl, but he is willing to now give up all of his pearls that he's been working with and buying and selling. He's willing to give up all of them to get this one pearl. That's the one that has the most value. All right. Okay, what are we doing? Number two, is the effort that we put in going to give us the result that we're looking for? When you're saving up to buy something, what is the expectation whenever you finally purchase it? Peace, contentment, enjoyment, things of these natures. But quite frequently, it doesn't turn out that way. Because we spend a lot of time trying to aim for something and get something, and then after we have it in our possession, we say, well, this is great. This is what I've been looking for a long, long time. And then we put it on a shelf. Put it in a box to hide it in some safety. What good does that? I never realized, that how much we gain that we hide away. Nobody else sees it. Nobody can look at the value of it. But that's what we are. We tend to. It's the idea of I've got it, and nobody else has it. All right, and that is that's a greedy way of looking at things. But if we look at something and say, if I have this, then I can produce more value later on. It's like buying a tool. A guy goes to buy a tool, and his wife says, "You're going to buy that? It's pretty expensive, isn't it?" Well, I can do so much more with this tool. That is, if you are willing to put the effort in after you get the tool, right? What's that? Uh-oh. That's the idea, though, that we, can we get a better value by using that which we are saving up for? In this context, Jesus is talking about a man who is rich to begin with. He has a productive farm that is going on, and one year he receives just a bumper crops. What am I going to do with this? It's just a bountiful year. Understand the how bountiful the year is. He's not got enough room to store everything he's produced. Okay, we tend to do that more and more. One of the things I hear about people going to buy houses is you got to have a lot of closet space, a lot of storage space. Yeah. Okay, what do you say? Well, I want to buy a lot of stuff, and I want to fill up these closets. And once they get full, I might have to have somebody come in and build me more closets, or a bigger garage, or something like this. What are we saying? The same thing this man is saying. I could, to supply my needs, or what I need to survive, I could put in the barns I've already got, and then I can sell the rest. So you're not losing the value, but you're not storing it. You're not holding on to it. I'm going to go out and I'm going to build bigger barns so they're going to hold all this new product I've got, and then I can sit back and take it easy. Again, there is no statement here that we should not plan for our future. This is not what Jesus is saying. There is nothing wrong with the man's, actually there's nothing wrong with his plan, except the greed that goes with it. It's not wrong to get rich. It's not wrong to plan for your retirement. Those are good, noble things to do. But is that all you want? What is the plan for the rest of your life? What's the plan for this man's rest of his life? Sit back in my lazy boy? Is that what life is all about? I knew of I know the man, but one of his jobs, he just recently had gotten this job, and he was talking about a fellow he was working with. And the job is, these little portable scooters and stuff, and you can go and you can, if you're on a medical plan of some type, you can get one of these little scooters. It was his job to take these scooters to individuals then unload them, show them how they operate, and so on and so on. Well, he had a fellow doing the same thing. And the guy was in his 70s, and my friend Carl asked him one day, he said, you're in your 70s. He says, you can retire. He said, well, you just go ahead and retire for the rest of your life. And he said, Carl said, the man told me something. He said, I never thought about it. He said, when did the Lord ever tell us that we are going to retire? I never thought about it either until he made that statement. You read in the Bible and you read about people who are talking about the idea of just sitting back and not doing anything the rest of their life. And those people are not praised for that attitude. When is our day of rest? When do we say, I'm done working? When I die. The Lord says that we are to work today, for the night is coming when no man can work. Right now we have to stay busy. We have to go out and continually doing the Lord's work. There is no retirement from the Lord's work. It is something that is a lifelong mission. When is our day of rest? And that's how we think about, when do I get my day of rest? There's an interesting thing in the book of Romans that talks about the Christian Sabbath. It doesn't say Christian Sabbath, but there is a Christian Sabbath. Now, again, the word Sabbath, if you're not familiar, is a word that deals with the idea of the seventh day of the week. We go back to the beginning of creation. The Lord created everything in 6 days, and then his day of rest, his day of ceasing from creating, was the seventh day. Later on, he talked about that and told others that you are to honor the Sabbath day, to respect the Sabbath day, not to do any work on that Sabbath day. That was a law given to the Jews in the Old Testament. One of the 10 Commandment laws that we know about. All right, so we come now to the New Testament, and people try to, they try to. I am not going to downplay the fabulous nature of the 10 Commandments, but at the very same time, people want to reverence them even today when they are no longer a law given to us. It was given to the Jewish people on Mount Sabbath, on Mount Horeb, Mount Sinai. The law was given to them. And yet we say, oh, yeah, but the finger of God wrote this on a plate of stone. And therefore they are going to be there forever. That is, no, they're not. In fact, if you reading 2 Corinthians this past week, and you read in there, if you were keeping up with your daily Bible reading schedule, the idea that this law that was written in stone was going to come to an end. That means the Sabbath law was going to come to an end. And yet we come to the book of Romans, and it talks about our Sabbath rest. When is our Sabbath rest? Heaven. You got it? When is your day of working? Now, today. Now we need to stay busy. We need to be focused on what the Lord wants me to do. And therefore, that which I am receiving, the blessings I receive from the Lord today, must in some way be used for the furtherance of that mission, because there is a day coming whenever I do want to retire. That's going to be in heaven. Not until then. Now, where are you laying up your treasure? Are you putting it in a barn someplace? Are you putting it in a garage? Is it your house? Is that where you're storing your possessions? All right. See, those are things that we need to be thinking about, and that's what Jesus is saying in this context. The rich man thought, I can retire from everything, sit back and just relax and enjoy the rest of my life. I like that in this context. How long was the rest of his life?
Tonight.
One night. Tonight, the Lord is going to require your accounting. Whenever we retire, we think, I've got, maybe 10, 15, 20 years. I can sit back and relax. This man probably thought the same thing. And what did the Lord give him? Less than a day, less than 24 hours. This day. All right? This day that your Lord is going to come, and you have to give an account. Okay? And again, we can bring in other parables. All these parables sometimes have a key ingredient in it. Remember the man that was going to go away on a long trip, and he called his servants in. He gives them one man 5 and one man 2 and another man 1 talent. He says, here, I want to go out and increase my wealth. All right, so the first servant takes his 5 talents. He goes out and he makes 5 talents more. The Lord comes back and gives an account. What did you do with the 5 talents? Here, I got you 5 talents more. You are therefore going to be praised. The same way with the man who had 2 talents. He went out and got 2 more. And then there was a man that had the 1 talent. And he went out and he buried it in the ground. Now, you say, well, in some areas of a community, it might be good to hide it from other people and bury it in the ground or whatever. That's not what he was told to do. He was told to go out and to invest it wisely. Sticking it in the ground is not investing it wisely. And whenever he now comes back the master comes back to him, and he now is reporting and giving an account of his actions, he said, here, Lord, you gave me 1 talent, and I'm giving you the same talent back. I didn't gain anything for you because I was frightened. Because I know that you are a harsh and severe man, and that you will require more than you gave to us. Now, if you understand, that's exactly the words that are used back at him. You knew me. You knew how I judge. You knew how critical I am. But yet you still failed to do what you knew that I required of you. You hid that talent in the ground. All right, so we have to, again, we're bringing all these ideas in. How does it fit here? Well, number one, we have blessings from God every day. The song we sometimes sing, count your many blessings. We have far more blessings than we could possibly count. And yet we don't look at them that way. We take many of them for granted. The food that we eat every day, we take that so much for granted. There are people in the world that cannot get food today for various reasons. And we don't even give it a second thought anymore. We have, again, so many blessings in our daily lives that we don't even stop to consider them anymore. Well, one of the things the Lord's saying here is stop and consider the blessings that you have. The Lord just blessed this man more than he ever did so in this man's life. And what is he thinking about? Helping other people with that money? Going out and investing it in the community? Or in his friends and his family? What's he thinking about? Him not working anymore. And now I've got enough where, I can not work and enjoy life for a long time to come. The Lord says, you fool. Tonight, the Lord's going to take away everything that you've been looking forward to. One night, it's going to be gone. Then he asks an interesting question. And then, where's your stuff going to end up? Who gets your stuff? It's a very interesting question. There are several times in the Bible that question is brought up. I believe it was Solomon in one of the Proverbs was talking about this idea that here you work all your lifetime, and now you're going to leave your possessions to people who are going to abuse them or squander them or whatever. I'm certain we all have heard within our own families or other people around about us how many family feuds take place at the death of people. First of all, it's not your stuff. It was somebody else's stuff. And now you're fighting over somebody else's stuff, which if they knew what you were going to do, they probably would have given it away to somebody else. Then who shall all this stuff belong to? Where's your stuff going to go to after you die? Good question. Something you ought to think about. What's your plans for your stuff when you die? Is it going to still be being put to good use? Or is it going to be squandered? Abused and maybe used in ways that you would be appalled if you knew what was going to happen to your stuff after you pass on. So this is a story about greed and selfishness. It's a story about not caring about people who are around about us. It's a story that talks about ease in this life. I don't want to go into too much, but the lesson of my sermon today is the God of all comfort. I want you to think about that a moment. The God of all comfort, because I'm going to deal with that. That's what my lesson is going to be about. It starts off with the God of all mercies and the God of all comfort. So two things, and we want God to provide the one, but we don't want to deal with that second part, the God of comfort. Why? Because the God of comfort implies something. But I'm not comfortable. And God's there to help me out. Well, that's a good thing. Don't get me wrong. But we don't want to think about the uncomfortable nature of life. And the Bible is full of uncomfortable things. So as we look at this context, if you can become rich, become rich. If you can build bigger barns and tear down your old barns and go on. If you can plan for your retirement, go ahead and do so. But don't make it all about the bank account, the final dollar. What is your value? All of the advertising is designed for one thing. And that is to say that you can be better if you buy this particular product. You may be, but probably not going to guarantee that. Better is an inner quality. Better is something that I've got to be working at each and every day. Better is, okay, what can I do today to not only benefit me, but to benefit those who are around about me? Where can I lay my treasures? And that's what the next part of this parable is going to go into. The idea of where we put our treasure at. All right, any thoughts on this particular parable? Again, a very, very beautiful parable. Yeah, Roger?
Verse 20, I work my head around, and my mind around this word fool, you fool. You know, a lot of times in the scriptures, that word means, well, the worst that somebody can be in, the worst situation somebody can be in, as far as the spiritual realm. A lot of places down on your bottom will say what that word means in that context. And it's interesting to me that he says, calls this man a fool, meaning spiritual depravity, if I will.
Yes.
I don't want that said of me, on my last days.
Yes. In the book of, I think a good contrast, looking at this word fool, is looking and examining the book of Proverbs. Because in the book of Proverbs, we talk about those who are wise and those who are foolish. 1 Corinthians chapter 1 talks about the wise and the foolish. And that's the idea here. Okay, now, if you are wise, you are putting value where the value needs to be placed, on your soul. Jesus says in other places that your soul is more valuable than the entire world put together. Do you value your soul to that extent? More valuable than anything. What would you sell your soul for? When you ask point blank, what would you sell your soul for? You say, well, there's not enough money in the world. I just wouldn't do that. And yet, we don't stop and think when an offer is placed out there for my soul. What do I mean? You might be an alcoholic, and you have sold your soul for the value of alcohol. You may be an addictive drug user. You have sold your soul for the value of those drugs. You may be addicted to something else. Too much TV or too much cell phone usage or whatever. All right? We understand that, but when it's pointed at us, we say, well, that's not me. You ever hear people say, well, I can give that up anytime I want to. Give up your cell phone anytime you want to. You just go put it on a shelf someplace and walk away from it. You want to do that? All right. I never even had a cell phone whenever I was growing up. The concept of being able to communicate with, well, we had CBs and stuff like that, but I'm talking about, communicating instantly on other sides of the world. Just never thought about it. Today, we think it's part of our arm. We have these crazy scenarios. Two people having a conversation. They're sitting on a couch side by side and they're texting each other. Right? We become addicted to it. Can you put it away? I'm not going to pull it out all day. You get the jitters. Right? Yeah, but I might miss something important. That's our excuse. I might miss something important.
I always tell people I'm not married to it.
Exactly. Okay. There's an interesting question. What are you placing before your soul? Is it a mobile phone? We don't like to admit it, but if there's something in your life that you're putting before other people, before God, then you need to reconsider it. I am not saying don't have a phone. Yes, they come in handy. Sometimes I wish I didn't have one because you get messages that you don't want to hear. But it's good to have, but don't make it the center focus of your life. And people they can't do that. They cannot do that. Anyhow, that's what he's talking about in this context. Don't put something before God. Put God first. And that means everything that I've got, everything that I own, is really not mine. You know, people, talk to people before, and they say, well, that's, they might be feuding over something, piece of ground or whatever. But that's my property. And I'm going to do what I can to get it back. I'm going to fight that person for it. You'd ask them a question. Did that property belong to you 100 years ago? Well, no, that might have been my great-grandfather's or whatever. And 100 years from now, are you going to own that property? Well, no. 100 years from now, I'm probably going to be dead. Precisely. So when do you actually own that property? You're just using it. You're just using it. And if we have that concept in mind, whatever I have, it is to be used for the Lord's service. Doesn't mean I have to sell everything I've got and give to the poor. Jesus did require that of a man one time. Sell everything you have and give it to the poor. Does Jesus give every person that same commandment? The answer is no. Why? Because everybody doesn't have the same problem that he does. Most people can see the value in things around them, the value of their soul. And therefore, you don't need that instruction of selling everything you have and giving it to the poor. It may apply to you, and you need to examine that. Are my riches keeping me from serving God? If they are, get rid of the riches. Your soul is more valuable. All right. He says in verse 21, so is the man who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. Now, there is the key. Are you rich to people in the world? People base your success, the value of your life, on how much you've got in the bank. They look at your bank account and you say, that's all you've got? Yeah, that's all I've got. You're a very poor person, aren't you? No, I'm rich. I'm rich. I've got friends. I've got family. I've got people who care about me. They don't care about my money. They care about my money. Might think they're a little bit crazy because I don't got any money. But at the very same time, they care about me because of who I am. So whenever we look at this idea, we can either be rich toward the world or we can be rich toward God. It is extremely difficult to be both. Paul will talk to Timothy and tell Timothy, you need to warn rich people. Warn rich people? Yeah. Because that love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. The love of money, not money. Money itself is a material object. It's a tool. But the love of that money, the hoarding of it, the gaining of it. He says, it's mine, it's mine. That love of that money is the root of all kinds of evil. That's what we have to be careful about. Are you rich toward God, or are you rich toward man? Remember the widow that came into the treasury and she deposited just a couple of coins in? All the rich people were coming in, and they showed, boy, look how many gold coins I can drop into the treasury, or how much silver I can drop in. Here comes a woman, throws in a couple pennies, and Jesus praises her. Why? Because she is rich toward God. She's not rich with these other people are not impressed with her value. How much money she has. She's got nothing. She just put in everything she had right there. She's broke. She is valueless. Jesus says she put in more than all the others. Why? Because she's rich toward God, not rich toward man. All right. Thoughts, comments, questions on that last part there. All right. Next week, starting in verse 22, Jesus is going to say where our main value is to be placed, but also don't let it get you down. God's in control. And once we understand that God is in control, then the rest of things can go along pretty easily. But who is in control of your life? Is it God or is it your stuff? All right. Closing thoughts, comments from anybody? If not, thank you for your time. We will pick up this.